We're getting a couple new people. We did just start recording so that everyone is aware. If it is a problem for you, please turn off your camera or mute your mic. We will be recording and sharing this recording later. So at the moment, for the people just joining us, my question for everybody today is, what is your favorite seasonal drink? Doesn't have to be this season. I'm getting a lot of cold season drinks right now. I do have some summer favorites too, especially in early summer. We have a rhubarb plant, and I love rhubarb tea, especially mixed with like raspberry or strawberry. That goes really fast in our house. So, peppermint mocha. So I love peppermint as well, all season. All right. I don't see anybody else that's still connecting. So, oh, we just got one more in the waiting room. We'll wait for her and then we'll get started. Vanilla latte, another really good drink. I think I have all my drink choices for the next week right now from you guys. So, um, all right. So, welcome everybody. I am Stephanie. I am the events coordinator here at Pillars. Normally, at this point, you'd be seeing Matt Malm, our community engagement director, but he is off in Italy at the moment and unable to join us today. So, you've got me the whole time, and not Matt. Sorry. That's okay. We're going to have a great role, anyways. I do have a question for all of you. If I can find the right button to share it. Hmm. They moved all the buttons around, and I am not finding where to share our poll. There it is. All right. So, just to give us an idea of who's in the room with us today, could you tell me how you are affiliated with Pillars? Are you one of our donors? Are you one of our staff members? Are you just a community member who's interested in the problem and wants to know more? Are you one of those partner agencies that we work with on a regular basis? You can be more than one of those roles, so go ahead and choose as many of them as work for you. Wait, we got a couple more people answering. All right. I know we have more than that for Pillar staff members, but I think I made them all co-hosts so they don't get to answer the polls. So that'll be slightly skewed. But it looks like we have pretty much everyone answered. So let's end that poll. It looks like today we do have mostly representatives from some of our partner agencies on the call, but a lot of community members as well, donors and volunteers. So welcome everyone. Remember, if you are here, you're part of our team. This is, there we go. So if you're here, you're part of our team. Homelessness is a huge issue, and it's not one that Pillars wants to solve alone. We are part of a collaborative community, and we value all of your input. We're so glad that you joined us for the conversation today. Um, so today we are going to be talking about the seasonal challenges of homelessness. It's October. We had that really nice weather up until a couple days ago. Now suddenly it's cool. It reminds us all that those seasons are changing. Leaves are starting to turn color. We just have that little bit. So we're starting to see Wisconsin seasons. And as we know, we have 4 distinct seasons in Wisconsin, and many of them have pretty extreme weather. And that can affect people, especially those who are currently unhoused. So we want to just dive into that a little bit today and explore a little bit more what that means. We do have several specialists who work with that on our call today to tell you a little bit more. We're going to start with Shannon. Shannon Jordan is our, see, now I don't have my notes up, so I don't have your exact job title. She's our in charge of data. I'm trying to pull my notes up really quickly.
Shannon is our grant and data specialist. I'll help you.
Grant and data specialist, thank you. So Shannon's our grant and data specialist. She takes care of all of our data for us. If we want to know numbers, we go to Shannon here. So if it comes to telling the story using those numbers, Shannon's definitely the person to go to. So she's going to talk to us a little bit about some numbers. We also have Ben, who is our outreach case manager. Ben is going to talk to us about outreach today. And then at the end of the call, we're going to have Jenny Moore and Lisa Strandberg. So our executive director, Lisa, and our client services director, Jenny, talk to us a little bit more about some of the things that Pillars has done in terms of our programming, some things that we might do a little bit in the future. So that's what we're going to do. As a surprise, I found out last night that we also have Paige Johnson on the call. Paige works closely with Ben. She is another one of our managers. She manages our case managers. So she might jump in and support Ben in his answers as well. So welcome to all of you guys, and let's get started. So Shannon, I'm going to start it off with you, and just a quick question for you. The problem of homelessness is huge. It's so large, it can be really hard to wrap its head around. Can you explain how we might define the scope of the problem, or we can quantify it? How do we start talking about homelessness?
Well, since you're asking the data person, I'm going to come at it from a data perspective. We need to be able to count what the scope of the problem we're trying to solve. So part of the problem definition is how big is the problem, and how do we begin to address the root causes, and until we know how big we need to address. Do you want me to go from there, or did you have another question?
No, you just go from there. Okay. I was having trouble unmuting my mic. So yeah, you have a lot that you can tell us about it. So let's hear about it. How do we quantify that?
So there are two key ways that we try and understand the scope of homelessness. And we have several definitions of homelessness, some defined by HUD. And we will be specifically talking about that kind of literal homelessness where people are unhoused. So that may be in the street, and it overlaps a little bit into people who are in the shelter who are still categorized as literally homeless. Next slide, please. So the first way that we count people is in coordinated entry, and you've heard our partner, the City of Appleton, Liz Crowley, talk about coordinated entry. She's the owner of our coordinated entry system for the Fox Valley Coalition, Fox Cities Coalition. The coordinated entry system helps communities prioritize assistance for people based on their vulnerability and the severity of the service needs that they have, in order to ensure that people who need assistance can receive it in a timely manner. So how does this work? When people connect with an agency in our community, there's a short standardized list of questions that helps to prioritize people using the same process across all agencies, so that their vulnerability and barriers to housing can be compared, and the ones that need help most get prioritized first to receive housing help. This coordinated entry list is organized by community or coalition. So our area is the Fox Cities. When people are enrolled into coordinated entry by one of these agencies, typically they choose the coalition where they're being interviewed or where they're being assessed to get on that coordinated entry housing list. They can request to be on more than one list if they can reasonably get themselves to another community. So someone in the Fox Cities Coalition may say, well, I can get to Brown County, Similarly, someone in Brown County might say, I can get to the Fox Cities. So if I could get help and housing there, I would be willing to reasonably get myself to that community as well. So this means that the number of people that we count as waiting to get housing in our area may include people who are not currently sitting, sleeping, wherever they're sleeping in our community. Similarly, some of our people may be on surrounding community coordinated entry lists also. Next slide, please. So any agency who receives HUD funding must provide access to coordinated entry, even if they're not providing the exact services that are provided by the spectrum of the coordinated entry housing list. So in Wisconsin, we call that no wrong door. That means that a client can go to any of our agencies. That would include in our community, Pillars, Advocate, Salvation Army, the City of Appleton, among others. So any client can get into the coordinated entry housing list by approaching any of those agencies. Next slide, please. So how many households are currently on the list? So every day it changes. People get added to the list, people come off the list. Every day it changes. There's some seasonal variability. I took a snapshot on Monday of where we are, of what our households look like on the Fox Cities list. When we combine households with children and households without children, typically we see those lists separate. I combined them for today's presentation, and in combining them, we're looking at households versus clients. The number of households on the Fox Cities list includes 193 in Outagamie County, as well as households that are on our coordinated entry list from surrounding counties. The 193 households that are currently residing in Outagamie County when they signed up to be on the list includes the 95 households that are in Pillars shelters. So that means what we take from that is there's 98 other ones that I don't know. They may be in, they're considered unhoused by HUD. There may be also, this is a public database only. So there is also, as a caveat, there are people on the confidential side of this list that I can't see that would add to this number. The next way that we count people, on the next slide, please. The next way we count people is in the point in time count. Sometimes we call this the PIT count. On the first and fourth Wednesdays in January and July, communities across America, not just in the Fox Cities, count the number of people who are living outside or in a place not meant for human habitation. This is essentially a census. So it helps us and HUD better dimension the homelessness, and so that we can understand and better work towards solutions collaboratively. In addition to that night of counting where we go out, and many of you on this call have participated in some form, in some way, in one or more of these counts. In addition to that night, just like a census, there's a post-PIT count. We can ask people in the days after that night where they were on the night of the PIT count. So some people that we may not have encountered the night of PIT, we may see at our resource center. We may see having lunch at Salvation Army, or we may encounter, they may approach our shelters to be on the waiting list in that time after. And we can ask them where they were that night so that we can get a better, more accurate, more thorough count of what is the scope of homelessness that we are working to solve collaboratively. This post-PIT time period increased a year ago. It used to be we only had 2 days to ask people where they were on that Wednesday night. We now have a week to do that. So this combination of increased homelessness, literal homelessness, and increased time to account for those people experiencing homelessness has led to a significant increase in the numbers that we report, and an increased representation of the homelessness that is being experienced. So when HUD reports those who are experiencing homelessness, it does include those who are outside, and it also includes those who are staying in shelters. So when we have people staying in shelters, it does not take away from how HUD sees and accounts for the number of people across the United States who are experiencing homelessness. So these are the two ways that we account for people, their experiences, and their stories as we work together towards solving homelessness. We are better at counting. We account for a greater percentage than we did 2 years ago. That number is also increasing. Next slide. So that number is also increasing. We see a greater number in July than January. We can only account for what we see, what we know, and it takes all of us to represent the people experiences and stories. Ben is our outreach case manager, and he can share a little bit more about what it means on those non-PIT count, on the other 364 days a year, what it means to encounter, to engage, to connect people to resources and help get them shelter and housing.
Before I close this slide down while people are still looking at the numbers, one of the things that always strikes me the most when I look at the PIT count data is that the numbers in July in summer are just consistently higher than the numbers in January. So we're finding more people outside on those nights when it's July versus January. And is there any reasons that you guys can use to explain that? I know obviously it's complex, but what are some of the major trends there that might explain why we find more people in summer than in winter?
So working in the shelter business and industry outreach business for Pillars and the warming shelter for about 10 years, this has always been the trend. Normally we'll see much higher numbers in the summer than in winter, especially those people staying outside. I think in the winter, people's relatives, people's friends are more likely to help people living with homelessness out, give them a place to stay. I think that's one major one. Also, people, sometimes they might leave shelter and stay out for the summer, because sometimes our clients, they'd rather keep away from the shelter has rules and structure, and sometimes our clients, they don't always work well with that, so they might even choose to stay outside, but that's not too many.
Additionally, there's a seasonal shelter in Green Bay that opens, that some of our clients migrate to that shelter. So it reduces our numbers some. This trend is not unique to our area. We see the same trend across the state.
So it sounds to me like it's a combination between people being more willing to have some freedom and avoid, using those shelter things. So they're making that choice, but also a combination of sometimes with that extreme winter weather that we have in Wisconsin, there are other resources available, whether that's shelter beds or just those connections, family and friend connections that we rely on. So it sounds to me like it's a combination of different factors that kind of lead, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Ben, outreach. A lot of like here at Pillars, we know what you do, but can you explain to the people on the call what is outreach? What do you do? How does it work?
Outreach, how does it work? What do I do? Okay. So as the street outreach case manager, I am Pillars representative to the people, our most vulnerable populations living on the street or in vehicles, and conversely, I am their representative reporting back to Pillars. What does outreach look like? I'm going out into the community, meeting people where they are at, and we start from there. I connect people with transportation assistance. I connect people with healthcare assistance, getting them hooked up to healthcare, particularly mental health care. I provide people with food assistance, gas card assistance, clothing assistance. Like some of us say at Pillars, there's no job too small. And if they need help getting somewhere, I can take them in my car and get them somewhere. Whatever they might need. And that's how I approach people. I don't approach people, hey, what are you doing here? Or hey, how long have you been here? I start with, what do you need? And we start from there, and that's really important. Not necessarily coming from a position of, well, you can't be here. It's how are you doing?
So, like when you're first meeting a client, it sounds like one of the first questions you have is, what do you need? What are some of the other things you focus on during that first encounter, the first time you meet someone?
A lot of times I'll work to get somebody on the coordinated entry list. And like Shannon was talking about, that's essential to getting people housing. Mental health care, again, is one important thing. And that's usually where we're starting. And then we build a case plan and work on people. Usually, of course, the biggest thing people want is housing. Unfortunately, that's one of the tougher things to come up with these days, is housing. And then just what I'm doing is I'm trying to give people somebody they can talk to, somebody who can understand them, and somebody that can empathize with them. I feel like I think that is very valuable. I think that's what people value about street outreach, just having somebody who's going to look out for their interests. And that's what I try to do most of all.
Is that something that they get from a lot of other areas in their life? Or is that something that they tend to not encounter, the opposite more?
It's no, frankly, a lot of the clients I'm coming across have had a lot of negative experience with law enforcement, negative experiences with service providers. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just as disappointments accumulate, trust erodes. And I that's why I'm careful. I don't promise people things. I say we'll do our best. And that's how I maintain trust with people. That's one big way I maintain trust with people, is not to promise. What is the common phrase? Under promise and over deliver always.
Yeah, it sounds like one of the biggest services that you provide is giving people someone to believe in so that they know they have someone in their corner. So one of the things we know when dealing with this is processes are slow and things take time. Do you get to see your clients frequently? How often do you meet with your clients?
It depends where their need level is at, honestly. If it's a high needs client who needs, perhaps if it's an elderly person who is in dire needs of assistance, unfortunately, that's probably the most disturbing change in over the years in the demographics we serve, the increase in elderly, very vulnerable people. If it's somebody more vulnerable, I'm going to give them more attention and meet with them more often. So I'll try my best to get them in once a week. if it's in now lately, now there's only one of me, there should be two of me, but my partner unfortunately is out with a long-term illness. She will be returning soon. I'm usually try to get with people about every 2 weeks. Most people.
So it sounds like one of the biggest barriers you have is just that limited time. There's just not enough time to go around to meet with people. Are there any other major barriers for working with the on house that you have that can prevent you with seeing them as often as you'd like?
Um, the lack of communication. A lot of my clients do not have phones. A lot of my clients they've gotten government phones before and they lose them or they get stolen. And then after that, it's very hard to get another government phone. And people, a lot of times, they don't always camp in places where you'd think they are. So I have to try to figure out where that is. And that could be difficult.
Um, so is there anyone else in the community that does similar work to you? I mean, you said that you're kind of doing this by yourself at the moment. Do you have any other agencies that help out?
Yes. This past in springtime, I think in April and May, we had Cheryl Sheffy from the city of Appleton come on board as a resource navigator to people living with homelessness, and she's been great. She helps people navigate resources, and really works on getting people on that coordinated entry list, which is so important for people to find housing if they have very little resources. So her introduction, we've never had anybody like that before from the city, and it's incredibly welcome. Liz Crowley, the city's coordinated entry specialist, has been, indispensable and a real blessing to us, coordinating with Pillars and helping us out with whatever we might need. So we do have help in that way from the city of Appleton, really like never before.
I'm so glad that you have some help then, because you are an amazing resource here at Pillars, but there is only one of you. So one of the questions I get when I go and talk with people in the community is people really don't know what to do if they encounter someone who's currently unhoused. As someone who encounters people currently unhoused, sometimes for the very first time, frequently, almost a daily basis, what can you give us for advice? What can we do? What can we say to someone who is or may appear to be homeless?
Now, during our dry run, you gave me this question. It stumped me a little bit.
It actually
I'll
came
start-
from Shannon, but
Shannon. Okay, so what I'll start with, to the people who are not familiar with dealing with people living with homelessness, if a situation makes you feel uneasy, if you're seeing maybe somebody under the influence, extremely under the influence, use your instincts. Because if you go up to somebody talking to them and you look uneasy or anxious, they're going to pick up on that. I don't have a script for people to use. What I was thinking about is, like, if you're feeling safe about it, approach them like anybody else you're talking to for the first time. Because they want to be recognized as human beings, not an other, because our homeless people living with homelessness experience so much stigma um, from so many people living in the city. So just be authentic, natural, let the intentions of your heart shine through. And what I always do when I'm talking to somebody the first time is I direct them to the Pillars Resource Center, which is open Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 4 p.m. And a lot of people I have a lot of people start there. So that's,
And
and
if,
it's, go ahead.
and that's a place where they can connect with you as well, right?
Right. Yes. If they need something, if you have the means, see what you can do to get it for them. It doesn't necessarily have to be cash. But if you're looking to build rapport with somebody, that always helps.
All right. And I know that you said that you always try to focus on what do they need. So is that a good question for us as well? So we meet someone, and we find out that they are living unhoused, asking, what do you need? How can I help?
So, yes. So what people are needing right now, is this where we talked about people's needs in the community or the homeless community? Okay.
I'm getting my screen up right now for a backup. So,
What is most popular is for me is transportation assistance, usually in the form of bus passes and gas cards. I think second most popular, especially during the summer months, is laundry cards from JJ's Laundromat. Um, it was a wet first part of the summer. It was very wet. You've had people and if they don't have laundry facilities, all their belongings get wet, they have to discard them because mold grows very quickly in these wet and warm environments. So JJ's laundry cards were very, very popular. And also food. Um, if you're on food share and you're always having to purchase food from Quick Trip or what have you, it goes very fast because that kind of food is expensive. So food share runs out very quickly. So we're always needing food. And now that now when we're changing seasons, I saw a fellow with his coat on already this morning. Will need sleeping bags and substantial blankets. The thicker the better. Not necessarily comforter size; those are hard to lug around. But that's what in my work I've seen what people request the most.
and just to kind of supplement what he said, we do have a wish list of some seasonal needs, that pillars, things that we give out frequently. Our online wish list is going to have our most current donation needs, and it will reflect, like, if we got a big donation of something and don't currently need that because we have a lot in stock, it'll be taken off the list. So things like that. You can always call us, reach out, call that main number if you have any questions about certain things. But for outreach specifically, sleeping bags and blankets, we can't get enough of those for that set of clients, as Ben was just saying. If you are going to donate food, try to have protein rich food in easy open containers. So if it's a canned food, it should have those pull tabs, because when you're unhoused, you're typically not carrying a can opener around with you. It's not high on your priority list. So something that they can open up. Also food that can be stored at room temperature and doesn't require like specific preparation. Um, I know I can make my groceries last a long time, but I have a full kitchen at my disposal and various storage options. People who are unhoused don't. So things like that are important when thinking about food that you're donating. Backpacks, these people do have to carry their belongings with them. So durable and adult size backpacks. I know when I was in the family shelter this time of year, as clearance, back to school clearance was happening, we got a lot of child backpacks. Those don't work well for our adult clients. They just aren't durable enough. And My Little Pony isn't the best look for everybody. Some people can pull it off, but not everyone. Personal toiletries. For outreach, we do love those travel-sized toiletries, but do remember that they do need to be new and unopened, especially with things like shampoo, things like that. They are chemicals, and when they are open and exposed to oxygen, they do have that timer start ticking in terms of how long they're good for. We cannot pass out opened toiletries simply because we cannot guarantee that they are safe and hygienic. So new and unopened ones are vital. So feel free to give us those. And as he said, the biggest need we have is those gift cards for those basic services. Things like Quick Trip, those can be used either for, a tank of gas in the winter especially, cars are how people stay warm if they're living in their vehicle. So having some gas is really important. They can also be used for some hot food. JJ's laundromat, we already talked about, and transportation needs. So Valley Transit bus passes, we can never have enough Valley Transit bus passes. If you're thinking more seasonal items, in terms of the winter that's coming up, so we need these from about October till April. Remember that nights are still get colder sooner. So right now we're starting to see some of those colder nights, and they stay colder longer. So through April and May, we're still using these items. So the hand and foot warmers, number one need. We go through so many of these. If you're gonna get us gloves, we prefer gloves that are like waterproof or thermal, simply because remember these people are outside, and if you get the cotton gloves, those get wet, and now they're no longer keeping your hands warm. So having that waterproof or that really thick glove is important. Larger sizes are helpful. Warm winter hats, again, remember things that'll take the elements so that can get wet, and they'll still be warm. And boots in a variety of sizes. Please make sure that they are warm and waterproof. We don't want to give boots that are worn out to our clients as well. So new or very gently used ones. In the summer months, bottled water is really important so people can stay hydrated. Bottled water is honestly important the whole year, but especially in the summer months. Rain gear, so to help people stay dry. So those rain ponchos are really, really important to us as well. So especially rain ponchos, bug spray and sunscreen, because these people are unhoused and spending a lot of times outdoors. And then hats in the summer is important too. Think like baseball caps or those hats with the wider brim, things that offer a little bit of sun protection. So those are some items that if you are concerned about this population and you're like, I want to give something that will help them directly, these are the items that Ben hands out on a frequent basis. So,
if I may add, especially about the transportation bit, a lot of services our clients need, especially medical services, especially if they have to see specialists, are quite far flung, very far from the city's center. So a bus pass a lot of times is the difference between them getting medical care, going to the doctor, or not. So that I have to underline that importance of transportation. Yes.
if you go back and watch our resource center episode of Conversations, one of the main parts of the resource center is transportation is such a huge barrier. So we wanted a place to bring all the resources in, but not every resource can be brought in. So providing transportation to our client is huge. Those gift cards, love the gift cards. They're also really easy to store because they're tiny. So blankets are really important, so are sleeping bags, but they do take up a little bit more storage space than a gift card. So, all right. So Ben, we are talking a little bit about seasonal challenges today. So one other question I have for you is, let's say you encountered someone and they are on the wait list. So they can't get into shelter quite yet. And it's a day with extreme weather. It's either really hot or extremely cold, or there's a storm coming. What are some of the ways that, I know our clients have incredible creativity in terms of surviving. What are some of the ways that you've seen that people can cope with this situation, this extreme weather?
That's usually people try to find enclosed spaces outside, like a foyer to a bank, a place behind buildings because they're away from the wind. People always manage to, we give out blankets and sleeping bags. But how well they are coping, I'm not sure. We do have additional programs during the winter at times, especially shelter overflow program, where we can have a little more occupancy. But yeah, people do what they have to do. They'll start fires near their camps. And I've never heard of anybody burning anything down. Um, so it's not so much different from what they do during the summer, except that they need more covering. And people have gotten very resourceful about staying out of the public eye, which does help them. It keeps them from being forced off the place by the police. And it keeps them, a lot of times it keeps them, they want to try to stay far flung from other people living with homelessness. Because unfortunately, one thing I'm seeing is there's an increase in a lot of theft going on within the community. The causes for that are uncertain, but a lot of people, they try to stay away from each other.
So thank you, Ben, for sharing your insights. And Ben will stay on the call if you guys have any more questions for him as our outreach specialist. Feel free to put those in the chat, or we'll have Q&A at the end. But I'm going to switch a little bit to Jenny and Lisa. So as our leaders, what do you have to say? How has Pillars responded to extreme weather historically?
I'm Lisa Stramberg. I'm the executive director for Pillars, and how Pillars has responded has changed through the years. I've been with the organization for 4 years, so I can't speak to the specifics beyond 4 years ago. But what I can speak to is that for the last 2 years, we have had resources through the city of Appleton. And I want to pause there and say you've heard many times on this morning's conversation about the city of Appleton, the resources that they provide, the partnership that they offer, the collaborative approach that they take to serving people in homeless experiences here in the Fox Cities. And we can't say enough about how valuable that is to have partners like that. Cheryl and Liz, whose names you've heard mentioned by Ben and Shannon, both are embedded in the Appleton Police Department. So while you've heard that some of our clients sometimes have negative interactions with law enforcement, they also have positive ones. And that's thanks to Cheryl and Liz, and thanks to the good relationship that Ben has built with our Appleton Police Department and our partners in that department. I've seen officers defer to Ben in having conversations with folks who are in a homeless experience. And that's a really beautiful thing to see. Anyway, back to what's happened historically. The city of Appleton has provided resources for the last 2 years through COVID funding that they received through HUD, through a program called the Community Development Block Grant. And those funds, to the tune of $100,000 a year, allowed us to operate an overflow program to expand the capacity of our shelter for 6 months of the year. Basically, we were able to add 6 to 8 additional beds and accommodate individuals and or households in those beds. What that did, though, was really add a third operational site for us for half of the year. And that operational site, at least in the past year, was staffed primarily by Mr. Ben Rankel, who you've been hearing from this morning. So as you might imagine, Ben, who has a large caseload to handle, having an additional site to also support, that put a lot of strain on our staff. So while the financial resources to cover the costs of overflow beds in a hotel were valuable, it's the additional staffing that was missing in order to cover that work. So that's one thing that we've done historically, was use those resources, which lasted for 2 years and have now been exhausted. Fortunately, we've got some partners who are working alongside us to extend that work this winter. We'll get to that a little bit later, I think. But I also want to say just how flexibly we operate and use our spaces, regardless of financial resources. And when temperatures are extreme, we get creative and try to use spaces as robustly as we're able to accommodate as many people as we can. Jenny, what would you like to add to that?
So in addition to extreme weather, I've been here for one winter. This will be my second. When, as Lisa said, we use our additional spaces, sometimes that's to help somebody spend some time staying warm in the lobby of one of our shelters so that they can warm up. But we also make sure that when other agencies close, our agency is open. So that can be the resource center, that's open Monday through Friday, where people can come and be warm and have coffee. And that's not somewhere where they have to have an appointment set up. They can be there all day. And when other agencies close and there aren't facilities providing lunch, our staff in that winter storm or in that frigid weather has a group of people who is then deployed, because there's not food at the resource center, to go to one of our other shelters and prepare food to bring for lunch, or to get pizza from a local establishment to make sure that people have a warm meal as they head into their day. We see staff who live further away switching shifts with one another to make sure that the shelter is covered and staffed with friendly faces when clients arrive. And we make sure that all staff can be safe as well. So they really work together to make that happen. I think the biggest thing is that in all that, we have people like Ben who are reaching out and talking with people when we see that cold weather coming. We're reaching out to people and making sure that they have what they need if we aren't able to get them in our winter shelter overflow program, and if we aren't able to get them into one of our spaces in shelter, we're making sure that they have either, talking to them about, who do you know? Do you have a family member? Can you get help in that way? And at the last resort, making sure that they have hand warmers and blankets and coats and boots and gloves that Stephanie mentioned at the beginning here.
So Jenny, you mentioned the Winter Shelter Overflow Program, which sometimes people may hear as WESOP. We're a company of acronyms. Any agency that works with the government typically is. So WSOP, Winter Shelter Overflow Program. So what is that? What is it not? What does it look like in the past? How might it look in the future?
Sure. I'll start by saying what it isn't, because we always want to make sure that people understand that it is not hotel vouchers. It is not hotel vouchers on those cold, extreme days. When that gets talked about in the community, it confuses people and it causes people to be disappointed when they arrive at our door. So it's not that. What it is exactly what Stephanie said. It is Winter Shelter Overflow Program, which really is an extension of our shelters at a different location. So throughout a period of months, and last year it was 6 months. This year it will probably look more like 3 months. It is extra beds that we have. And so what happens is you heard about Ben going out and meeting with people in community and talking with people in community. Ben is referring people specifically to Winter Shelter Overflow Program as our people in our shelters. Typically, we are looking at folks that are most vulnerable and need to get shelter as quickly as possible to be on that list. What we do is it operates just like a shelter, so it has the same rules of shelter. Individuals go through the same background check and the same intake process. It might be a little bit reduced, and they have probably more paperwork to fill out when they get into shelter, but they stay in that location until a shelter bed opens, and then they transition into shelter. We do daily checks in the room to make sure that they're following the rules. And we make sure that they have food and sometimes transportation. So the things we talked about before, where Ben's talking about bus passes. Folks have bus passes or a list of places they can get food. They can also get lunches and water from our shelter because they are essentially on our waiting list, waiting to get into services. And when that room opens, they're given a call. When a spot opens at one of our shelters, they're given a call to move into that spot. And at that point, then we have another bed open for the next person on the list for the Winter Shelter Overflow Program. So I think the biggest thing is it's not a voucher program. It operates just like a shelter. And as Lisa said earlier, it takes staff to do that. It takes staff to go through the list and make the phone calls. You heard Ben talk about people without phones. So sometimes that's finding people. and letting them know that we have a spot for them, and that is Ben who is doing those things, and getting them into that program until we have a spot opening in our shelter. I think, should we
Lisa,
talk a little bit?
anything to add?
Do you want to, Lisa, did you want to talk a little bit about what we're planning to, like, what this year looks like, or do you want me to take that? We didn't practice.
Stephanie, where would you like us to go next?
What is this year going to look like, Lisa?
Yeah. Fortunately, I mentioned earlier that we've got some partners coming alongside us to help make overflow possible. I want to emphasize why that matters. Our organization is underfunded and under-resourced every day of the year. So for us to operate a third site, for us to accommodate more folks, it takes more money, it takes more resources, and we're under-resourced and underfunded every day of the year. So I want to start there. If you are a person or an organization who is supporting our work financially, in other ways, please keep doing that. And please keep doing that. And if you're able, support winter operations as well. And that's what we've had some faith communities do. First United Methodist Church in Appleton set a goal early in the summer to raise $20,000 to support our operations. And just this past Sunday, I was in their sanctuary and was handed a giant check for $25,000. They exceeded their goal, which will support a couple of months of operations through the winter. We also have First Congregational United Church of Christ in Appleton coming alongside us with minimally $10,000 of support for winter overflow operations on top of their regular support of what we do as an organization. First Congregational United Church of Christ is also hosting on October 12th a faith-based housing summit. I know some of you on the conversation this morning will be part of that summit. October 12th, that's a Saturday, 9 to 2, meant to rally faith communities toward collective action around a number of affordable housing needs. Winter operations is just one of those needs, and some of them are much further reaching and longer term in scope, and those are important too. So another thing that you can do to ease our operations, which, as Jenny said, will likely be 3 months, possibly more, depending on how we're able to staff and depending on how that looks for us. Everyone can get involved as volunteers and support our day-to-day operations, because additional volunteers in our shelters every single day makes it easier for our staff to support winter operations at a third site if that's what's called for. So knowing that we are both understaffed in terms of personnel, but also in terms of volunteer personnel. We rely on volunteers to the tune of about 8 FTEs, full-time equivalents a year. And that's critical to making sure our shelters can operate smoothly so that we can do these over and above things that rising homelessness in our community are calling for. Did I hit the high points, Stephanie? How'd I do?
Yes, and I just want to throw out a caveat since we're just talking about volunteer needs. We do have a volunteer manager on the call. Tessa, maybe you can put your email or the best way to contact you if someone who's not already connected with Pillars would love to volunteer and help out there. We've already shared our in-kind donation needs if that's how you wish to support us. And of course, financial donations are always welcome. So, any other final thoughts, Jenny? Otherwise, I'd like to open it up for questions. We are getting to the end of our time. So if anyone else has these questions.
I just want to say to Kelly Cole, who I see shouting out in the chat, the very thing I wanted to close with, which is to reiterate what Ben said, let the intentions of your heart shine through. That's so critical to supporting folks who are living with homelessness. Thanks, Kelly.
All right, any final questions? I haven't seen any questions come through in the chat. I was very pleased with Zoom today because it did not close my chat when I shared my screen. So, all right. I do want to respect everyone's time. So if you do have a question, please throw it in the chat or unmute and ask. But I also want to share just a few more notes so you guys know what's going on with Pillars. As I mentioned at the beginning of the call, October is one of our busiest months at Pillars, and a large part of that is that we do have our fundraising event, Keys to Hope, coming up. It is on Thursday, October 17th this year, so coming up very quickly. If you would already are registered to attend, great. We're happy to have you. Expect some more emails with information about that coming out shortly. If you are not and you would like to join us, it's a lovely evening, 5 to 9 p.m. Includes a 3-course meal, lots of fun events like a silent auction, mystery wine wall, things like that. Limited ticket raffle. There's a beautiful Kendra Scott necklace this year with a matching bracelet. So if you'd love to join us, you can still buy tickets. Those will be on sale through next week, Friday, which I believe is October 11th. If it's not October 11th, it's whatever Friday is closer to October 11th. So come join us. We still have a few tickets available, so I hope that you guys can. If you cannot join us for that event because you have something else going on that Thursday, feel free to donate to the event as well. The J.J. Keller Foundation has given us a challenge match of $40,000, and they will be matching Keys to Hope donations that are from new donors or that are the increase over previous years. So if you are able to donate financially instead of coming to the event, that works too. Just try to put Keys to Hope, like on the memo line of your check or in the comment section if it's an online donation, and then we can get that applied to that challenge match as well. Conversations Over Coffee is done for the year. This is our last one in the 2024 calendar year. We'll be back in February. So be watching out for that. But we do take a break for the holiday season because everybody's very busy throughout the holiday season. So I see it is 8:29. Any final thoughts before we end at 8:30? Thanks to all of our speakers for being here today and sharing the vital work that you guys do. Pillars work so hard and tirelessly every day throughout every weather condition. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone for being here on the call. Remember, if you're here, you're a part of our team. You're a part of the solution. And thanks for being with us and having these discussions. All right. Have a great day, guys. It's exactly 8:30, so I'm gonna end the call right now.
Thank you all.
Bye. Enjoy your day, everybody.